well, I hate to call it rage game, but
Did you spend time prototyping for a difficult game about climbing?
I didn't really do any prototyping.
Do you think there's a lot of untapped potential in the game dev YouTube space?
Honestly, like the only success is Danny. Like, let's be real here.
In those early days, were you funding from YouTube?
The main benefit of making a YouTube channel is probably not going to be money.
Welcome to the Dev Dream Podcast, featuring conversations to keep both you and me inspired in our journey of making games. Now, for me, today was a real privilege, and it's a bit of a surreal moment, because if I had to pick a single piece of game dev content that I would say is my actual favorite and also inspired me the most in those early days when I was really struggling to get anything to even move on the screen, it would be the Punch a Bunch devlog series, which was created by today's guest, Ponty Pants. Now, I've been following him since the Punch a Bunch days, but he's also since released a difficult game about climbing, which I would say has gone viral and has been played by pretty much every streamer I know. So I got to talk to him about design decisions for both Punch a Bunch and a difficult game about climbing. I talked to him about how he actually didn't really prototype at all, and even how he doesn't really view a difficult game about climbing as a rage game, and much more. Now, quickly before we move on, I am excited to announce that I'm hitting the point in this channel where I really want to make it something sustainable so I can keep putting out these videos. And so we're going to test around with some YouTube memberships. Now, I won't go on and on, but I have some unique ideas about that I will talk about at the end of the video for anyone interested. Now, without further ado, let's get straight to this amazing video.
Well, I think it would be fun to start hearing about your journey. You know, a lot of the people watching the pod and commenting are solo developers or hobby developers, and I think there are people that aspire somewhat to the journey you've had. And I think it would be neat to start. So 8 years ago, you posted your first video game on YouTube, and that was Flappy Fart. And in that video, you just exclaimed, like, I did it, I made that. And that's such a cool feeling. And I'm wondering if, you know, you're 8 years in now to game dev, does game dev still hold any of that same, like, I did it excitement, or is it becoming more normal for you these days?
No, I think it still does, for sure. Absolutely. That was a bit of a funny project. Because the Flappy Fart, I really just started as a joke. I was having lunch with some friends at work, and I don't know, for some reason we came up with that idea. It's like, oh, because we were like kind of talking about mobile games and how they're kind of stupid, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll just make, it's like Flappy Bird, but farting. and so, and I was like, oh, I don't know. It was like a bet. I was like, I could do it in a week. I could do that in a week. And my colleagues were just like, there's no way you can do that. And I was like, okay, watch me, baby. And that's how it started with that. So that was fun. No, but I do think I definitely feel just as happy to be, especially just like kind of in the process, figuring things out. I definitely enjoyed that just as much as back then, if not even more at this point, honestly.
Actually. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of developers that if you find out they've made a successful game, if you can go back to their backlog, you'll see that, you know, right before that, or like there's literally a story on the tip of my brain, but it's like someone that made a really famous game.
Oh, your audio cut out.
Oh, no. That is not good.
I don't know if the recording, but now it's good.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I will try not to touch anything. That would be
I don't know what happened. It just went totally quiet. Okay, anyways. Take it again.
Sorry. Anyway, I was just saying, I think a lot of people, if you can find out about a successful dev and go back, like, there's one on the tip of my brain that I can't think, but he made a very famous game. If you go back like 3 little games, he made like a little internet game that was basically like, you know, poop.exe or something. Like, it's very silly. Like, there's something to that, making something silly. Now, whenever you made Flappy Fart, it was about 3 years before you like really committed on YouTube to making games. Do you know, or do you remember back to those early days? Like, was game dev just like a hobby that was having a hard time sticking, or were you just always learning during those couple of years? What were those earliest days like for you, and what was your relationship with game dev?
I kind of like, I have the same origin story as everybody else, so I won't bore you with that. But like, basically, I wanted to make games as a kid, but like, I grew up in Sweden. I didn't speak any English. It was really hard to find tutorials or anything for that matter back in like the late 90s, right? So I gave up pretty quickly. I mean, I did try. I found some software that you could make games with, but I just kind of thought like, well, what am I going to do with this? And then I kind of developed a passion for making little short films and video, which ultimately landed me a job in the film industry as in VFX. Like I was a VFX artist. And a colleague at work was just like, dude, I found this course on how to learn Unity. And I was like, what's Unity? And he was like, oh, it's this game engine. And I was like, wait, what? You can make games? And so I guess I hadn't really paid any attention to making games at all. Like, it had always been in the back of my mind, but it was just sort of like this, oh, you got to know how to program. I don't know how to do that and all that stuff. But so, yeah, he told me about this course, which was, I think they're called Gamedev.tv now, but it used to be on Udemy. And so I was like, oh, that's so cool. And so that course kind of taught me a little bit of basics in Unity. And I kind of just learned it for fun. Like it was more like a leisure time. Like I would just relax in the evenings and follow along tutorials and make little things. And I really enjoyed it. And so I was doing that for a few years until eventually I was like, well, it'd be kind of cool to do something real. But I was also getting really tired of corporate life at the time because I've been in the industry for about 10 years at this point. And I was like, I'd turned 30 and I was like, is this it? Am I just going to keep doing this now? And this is going to be what it is, just like back and forth to work. Just, I don't know. I liked my job, but it just felt a bit like limiting, I guess, at some point. And I really wanted to see if I could do something on my own. And because I had been tinkering around with making games for a while, I was like, maybe I could do something with this, right? So
yeah, I think a lot of people resonate with that. Like the corporate experience, even if you have a good job, like I think there's a portion of people that, maybe it's an entrepreneurial spirit, or maybe it's just creativity, or maybe it's just that our corporations these days kind of suck. But yeah, wanting to get away from that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that your VFX background helped you at all whenever you started making Punch a Bunch?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I knew a bit about 3D softwares and stuff like that. So it felt very familiar to learn things and get into things. Like I already knew how to model things and stuff like that. So I definitely helped a lot with that aspect. And because I was so used to computers and dealing with them on a daily basis, it felt very intuitive to learn things. The only thing that I was totally green on was programming. So that was kind of my biggest hurdle, I think. But so, yeah, if you have to learn programming plus everything else at the same time, obviously that makes it a lot harder. So I definitely feel like I had some background that helped. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then obviously that translated really well into your YouTube channel. I mean, I would say part of Punch a Bunch's success is you're an entertaining person, but also you can see the videography, and you can tell that like it's got a sort of, little bit of like lifestyle kind of editing into it that is just more accessible to a wide range of people than like a really technical devlog would be. And so something that I'm really curious to ask you, I've been able to ask a couple of other YouTubers this that kind of have this like YouTube/game dev origin story. Do you think for someone watching today that, maybe they feel like you, they want to escape the corporate job, do you feel like doing the YouTube game dev combo for someone that wants to make games is still a viable option in 2026?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I think,
yeah.
I mean, I understand you want me to elaborate on that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, in short, yes, I do think it is viable. And I know that the general advice is to not do YouTube.
Yeah.
And I understand where people are coming from with that. But at the same time, it's like, I think if you're passionate about it and you want to do it and you feel like you have something to add to the YouTube scene, like you're feeling motivated, I think absolutely it's viable. But it depends on what you also mean with viable, I suppose. Like, are we talking Are we talking like making a living or promoting your game, or just like what are we trying to get out of YouTube?
Yeah, that's an important distinction. Let's say for this conversation, more than just someone that wants to make a hobby project. Let's say that someone that wants to escape the corporate life with some form of creative game dev content or lifestyle.
Yeah, okay. So and make a living off YouTube.
Yeah. And or
I mean,
game dev. Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. So you're way probably better off making money from making a game than making YouTube videos. Not in general. Obviously, you can make money on YouTube, but making money on YouTube off game dev content is very difficult because you'll be. I mean, I think this has been said many times before, and I don't really have anything to add to that, but it's very difficult to make money off YouTube, and especially when it comes to game dev. Uh, but at the same time, I'm like, look, if you have a good idea and you're thinking, hey, I can do this, I can make interesting videos, and I'm really motivated to do that, it's like, do it. I think it's definitely worth trying, right? And you'll know pretty quickly if it's for you or not, because it's a lot of work, so you'll find out quickly. But I feel like there's a lot of people online that are kind of dissuading devs, like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. But I'm like, I don't know, like everybody has their own path they need to take, I think. And if you're feeling motivated to try YouTube, I think try it. I mean, you can always just not continue if it's not for you, right? So I think it's worth trying. That said, I think you should probably try before you quit your job, right? Like that's what I did. Like I was kind of making videos for, I don't remember exactly how long, but it was like several months, 6 months or so, or something like that, before I actually quit my job to like really, kind of see, do I feel like I could do this? Is it going to work? So you probably want to do it that way.
Yeah. Have you given any thought to how much YouTube has helped propel you to where you are? Like, do you think there's a world where you could have just made Punch a Bunch in the dark and released it and still gotten to where you are today? Or for you, do you think that YouTube was essential?
No, I think it was YouTube was absolutely everything, especially for Punch a Bunch, because like put it this way, if I hadn't done YouTube Punch a Bunch, I would not have finished that game. And because one of the most valuable things as well was that, getting like a feedback from people, like watching the devlogs and then trying a demo I released, like I got a lot of feedback from that. And so it really changed how, like, the direction of the game. So that's also one thing that is like, if I had followed the advice to not do YouTube, I wouldn't even have released the game. So it's like, yes, there's all these arguments that making videos takes a long time. You should probably be spending that time making video games. And yes, I do agree. But at the same time, it's like you need to like anchor yourself to something. And for me at the time, that was YouTube. So just the fact that I was making videos and having to like upload things about the game made the game progress. Not as fast as it could have maybe, and it maybe could have been a better game if I hadn't done that, but at the same time, it wouldn't have been a game at all if I hadn't done YouTube. So for me, it was everything. And I also think just the fact that I had so many people watching the devlog really helped with the game as well. Like I don't know that it would have sold at all if that hadn't been the case. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because just something I'm learning through this podcast is just that there's so many different routes to success. And most of the people I've interviewed have said, yeah, don't go make devlogs. And I think maybe one piece of your content that's important to note is the accessibility. Like, I was listening to a video the other day and someone was talking about how like a really technical devlog is going to be mostly for other developers who are like mostly a small community and not going to play your game very much. But I think you did something very smart in that your videos were also just relatable to like just about anyone. And so like, you'd include like a little segment of like, here's the challenge I had today, and here's a little coding thing of how I solved it. But then also like, here's when I went to the park and like sat down with my wife and ate a sandwich, and here was the things I was thinking about. And so maybe there's a little bit of that formula for people to consider, is like, how can you maybe reach a little bit bigger audience? Like, so somewhere between the most technical devlog and maybe Danny, because that's maybe so accessible. And I mean, Danny, who knows? Random thought. speaking of Danny, now that he came up, have you heard of this developer that made Meabunk, Vetted Dad? Do you think he's Danny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he probably is. So anyway, that was just a little side tangent. I think that's such a fun topic.
I don't know. I feel like it must be, right? I don't know.
Right.
It's I
Yeah.
saw some video breaking down some details about it. Um and yeah, I feel like it must be Danny because like it was like how was it? Well, first of all, the username is obviously Danny Dev backwards, and I don't know, like, I mean, I guess the only thing would be if okay, let's say that it was a different person that made it, then and asked Danny, "Hey, I'm gonna do this bit, right? Like, I'm gonna use your name
Yeah.
backwards. Is that cool?" And Danny's like, "Okay, let's go do it." I think that could work, but I saw some like there's like in Megabonk, there's sound effects that are the same as in some of Danny's games, and something about like the movement controller, how you control the guy, is the same as in Danny's games. Mind you, it could have been like a Unity asset store thing, maybe. So maybe they used the same thing, but it just seems so unlikely. And it's all Danny style. Everything is Danny, and obviously the quality of the game is great, which not anybody could do. And also the quality of the video is great, which also is hard to do. So I don't know. There's too many things. But hey, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe not. But
it's one of the funnest little like stories in game dev. Like
it's so fun.
even if it's not Danny, it's just a genius move. And
It's
and like you
great.
said, he probably at least reached out to Danny or maybe knows him because I saw, the real old Danny account responded to a comment section within the last month or two based on some Blackthorn prod stuff. So he's alive, like he would, I think he would say, like if someone was stealing his thunder, he would maybe say, not me. I don't know. Anyway, it's super fun. That was a little side tangent. I was just curious about.
Such a fun lore thing. It's so cool. It's such a genius move. And the fact that we still don't know for sure, I think it's great. It's awesome.
So good. So good. Yeah. The longer we don't know, the better. Something interesting you dropped just a couple minutes ago was that, you were talking about people on YouTube, and if they feel like they have something to add, then they should go for it. Did you feel like you had something to add whenever you started on YouTube? And what was that?
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, no, I did. I mean, yes, I did. Let's see. It's been a while, but I remember like I was super inspired by vloggers at the time, Casey Neistat in particular. And if you watch my earlier videos, you'll probably notice how like influenced they are, because I just thought it was so cool to like, because I had been making short films in university, so I had some experience filming and stuff, and I really liked like telling a story with a camera and like different camera angles and stuff like that. And so I thought it was really cool how people documented their lives but applying like cinematic techniques like camera angles and stuff, not just like, oh, click record and but actually like placing the camera, walking up to it, doing like little scenes or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, maybe I could do that, but like I'll make it about how I'm making a game. And so I was like super pumped about that. And I think that that's also important. Like if you're like super excited about something, I think you should do it. And I was really excited about making videos. So, I think that if you feel that way, it's a great idea to make videos. But if you're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to tick a box, like make YouTube, whatever, like I don't think that's going to probably work because it's so competitive and people don't want to just watch anything. People want to watch like, something interesting, right? So I guess that's how I felt. But then I also quickly realized how like incompatible the two things are, because it's like you're gonna have people that are like, oh, I don't care about your game, I just want to see more of your vlog or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are like, oh, I want to see more about your game, can you stop filming useless things about your life, I don't care, right? So you kind of end up with a very disconnected audience there that kind of pull you in two different directions. So, I kind of steered away from that after a bit, because I just found that it wasn't a great idea, but at the same time, like, it was fun to try, right? Like nobody had done it really in that way. I think the closest would probably be Devduck, but slightly different, right? Like it's not quite the same, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of cinematography in Casey Neistat influence definitely shines through. I do think it made for a unique kind of style in the game dev space, which I think is really cool. So that's something that people I think can definitely take away as like a point as they think about maybe doing YouTube or devlogs or what that could look like.
Yeah, like if you're inspired by something and you're thinking, hey, I don't see that in this space here, like maybe I could do something, right? Like try it, right?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of untapped potential in the game dev YouTube space. Like
I
that
agree.
could look
Like
like a lot of things.
honestly, like the only success is Danny. Like let's be real here. Like yeah. There's like me and some other people, but we only really have one like magnum opus, and it's Danny, right? So and he's not even making videos anymore. So there's like when I hear like, oh, there's no space for this, like there's absolutely there's absolutely room for more people to be doing this, but it has to be obviously high effort stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and the good thing about having Danny there is that it's like he shows like the upper limits. Like, if you look at game dev as a whole, it seems like, oh, maybe it's too small of a community to even care about. But like clearly there's enough people, if you can make it accessible enough, that like you could be, like a D-list celebrity almost or something, like very, very famous in the worldwide scheme. So another thing, kind of shifting gears, that I was curious to talk to you about is just kind of how you were able to go full time before Punch a Bunch released. And then there's kind of two sides to that. One, you've talked about just some of the decisions that you and your wife made, like financially to cut back and set yourself up to be able to live. And then also just, in those early days, were you funding from YouTube, or did you do any income stuff, or just kind of how did you make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of summed it up yourself. Like we had savings obviously, and just focused on reducing expenses to a point. We moved, we used to live in Vancouver, which is like crazy expensive, so we moved over to Vancouver Island, which we still live here. It's great, love it. But it's not cheap here either, but it's cheaper. And so, we made a lot of sacrifices and left a lot of friends behind and all that stuff. And yeah, lived off savings a little bit. But also, my wife was working on like a website, and she also has a YouTube channel. So she was making money as well. So we had kind of a combined income that made it work. Yeah. So, it wasn't like a huge scary. It was scary to quit my job, of course, but it felt like we had a plan, right? It wasn't just like, oh my God, we have 3 months and that's it of savings, right? Like we had, enough to live quite a while, and we were making some money online. And obviously I was making some money on YouTube, but it wasn't, I can't remember how much I was making, honestly, but probably averaging like $2,000-3,000 maybe a month, like, a sponsorship here and there. But yeah, not something you'll get rich off. And I was like grinding hard on YouTube. So it's not like I was like, it's hard to make money on YouTube. It's hard.
Yeah. Already. I mean, I've put, I think, 6 months worth into this channel, and I did get monetized. So that was exciting. So I made about $7. So
nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, that was super exciting. But 6 months for
$7,
$7, obviously,
time to buy a Rolex.
Exactly. So it does take a lot of time and effort to even get to that point. Once
I mean, I think it's important to like, let's just like put it out there that it's like the main benefit of making a YouTube channel is probably not going to be money. But like I said, like it can be a huge source of motivation. It can be a great exposure for your game. And also, like, if you're making videos and this is like, okay, this is very important. If you're making videos and you're making devlogs about your game and stuff and nobody's watching, it's a little bit like, it's possible that you release your game and it just blows up. But it's like, if nobody wants to watch it, if nobody wants to like really, if nobody cares about it before you release it and you're trying to put yourself out there, it's like kind of like you got to be realistic. Like, why would that change after I release, right? So it's a very good practice to just sort of attempt some marketing, like, for example, Punch a Bunch is, if you look at the color scheme, it's very primary, like yellow, blue, and red. And it's like mega max saturation. And the reason I picked that color palette was because I was like, I got to make thumbnails that are like right? So that like you stop scrolling, and that's really like where that color scheme came from. It was literally just for YouTube thumbnails, because like I got to get views here, because I tried to make YouTube videos before and it didn't work at all. I was making like gaming content and whatever. I was just like, this is not working. But I kind of like learned, at least I was like, okay, but you got to capture people's attention somehow. So with this new game I'm making, let's make sure it pops, right? So I think it's just it's a great experience, and it's good practice, and you kind of learn to like get a little bit of a gauge of like what attracts people, what gets people's attention, what doesn't work. And so then you can also apply that knowledge when you're actually making the game, like you start thinking about retention and stuff like that. It's like, okay, if I make things boring in my video, people bounce off. And I mean, if you make things boring in your game, people bounce off. So you can, there's a lot of like transferable skills there.
Yeah. Do you remember with Punch a Bunch any moments early on where, you sort of mentioned like, not exactly play testing, but sort of an early validation of like people at least seeing it and being interested? Do you remember any of those early days? Like, was it just more YouTube traction than you thought? Like you've mentioned, it was a big motivator in people's responses. Were there any moments that stood out of people, or maybe just enough people watching Punch a Bunch to inspire you to keep going?
I was just very surprised. I remember in the beginning, well, like I wasn't surprised that people were watching my videos, because I was just sort of like, yeah, baby, that's right. I put in so much effort. I've studied YouTube. I've looked at so much YouTube stuff. I know how to do this. I'm going to do this. And then it worked. And I was like, yes, I figured it out.
Yeah, that's
right.
amazing.
So that was sort of like the feeling at first. But what I didn't really expect was that people started like talking about the game, and they were like, dude, you got to make this game. You got to finish this game. I love this. I can't wait to play it. And I was just like, I didn't really mean to even like make a game out of it. It was just sort of like, I think it was over Christmas 2019. I started playing around with this prototype because I was doing kickboxing at the time. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to make like some sort of game where you kind of lean with your upper body, or I just had this idea, right? So I just kind of prototyped it, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I just left it for a couple of months. And then I was like, I want to make YouTube videos. I want to do something. I want to like, I was just like kind of desperate to get out of my job. I was like, I got to do something. I got to do anything. And I had been, like I said, I've been trying to make other videos, but I was like, let's make it about game dev, because I like both. So we'll make a combination. I was like, well, I don't know what like game to make. And then that project, I spent a couple of hours on. I was like, well, why don't I just start with that? Like, it was not too much thought put into it. It was just, I have nothing else, so I'll just do that. And yeah, that's how it sort of went. And so that's why I was so surprised that people were like, oh, I want to play this. I was like, okay, I guess we should make a game then. The initial plan was to just make a super simple, like local multiplayer, no AI or anything like that. But then because people were like into it, I was like, I should probably make something. And then one trap you can end up with in YouTube as well is you become afraid to actually finish your game, because once you finish your game, what are you going to make videos about? So I think there's also a bit of that, just like holding on, clinging on to it, like almost wanting feature creep to just work more on it to keep making videos.
Yeah, definitely like the two ends of the spectrum are like, you can work on a game for 10 years and release it and it'd be terrible. Another interesting thing you kind of like, what you said there made me think about is prototyping. And that, I'm going back and forth on this value of prototyping the more devs I talk to. Like, is it even that important? Is it more important to just dive in and finish something? After you finished Punch a Bunch, did you spend time prototyping for a difficult game about climbing, or was it a similar process of just like, I made something and I found it interesting, I just kept going?
Yeah, I didn't really... There was no real hesitation there. I started working on the climbing game when I was still patching up Punch a Bunch. Like I was still doing some patch work, fixing bugs and balancing issues and stuff. And I started working on the climbing game. I obviously prototyped the climbing game, but it wasn't like it was a pretty like a straight arrow. I kind of had in my head what I wanted to make, and it worked. So I was like, yeah, I'll just keep going on with it. Like it definitely wasn't it wasn't a very curvy road, which is why I was able to make it so quickly. Like I don't think it even took me a year to make the game. It was about a year, but yeah, so I didn't really do any prototyping at that point. I just sort of jumped because I've been wanting to make like I hate to call it rage game, but I've been thinking about a rage game, or let's call it a FODian game. We'll call it a FODian game.
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
for
like
me, a rage game is very different from a FODian game.
I know what you mean.
For me, I was like, when I played Getting Over It, I was like, I love this. I can't wait to get more of this stuff. And I think that the design in Getting Over It is so interesting, which I don't think I've played a single rage game that captures that. For me, it's not the difficulty. Like when I play Jump King or Alt F4, or any of these games, like no hate, but like I just get angry and frustrated, and I didn't feel that way when I was playing Getting Over It. I felt curious because the controls are so unique. And so for me, when I was playing Getting Over It, I was like, it's really like learning to ride a bike. Like in the beginning, it just feels impossible. Like
Yes,
there's no way you can do this. But I think everybody has that moment when they first start riding the bike and it just clicks. And it's like, oh my God, I can do this, right? And I really wanted to capture that feeling because like my climbing game isn't, I know people is going to disagree here, but it's not that hard once you kind of get comfortable with the controls. It really isn't. Like I can play the game with like my left hand, like with one eye, and it's no problem at all because like I'm so used to it. Obviously I'm the developer, so
Sure.
but and I wanted it to be about that, and that's what was interesting for me. And so I never really set out to make like a rage game. But then obviously it has components of that because that's what kind of makes it interesting. The fact that you can fall down and lose a lot of progress. Like I think it creates tension and it makes it interesting. Like if it was just like checkpoints all the time, it wouldn't be the same experience, right? So yeah, I knew I wanted to create something like that. And I had been thinking about it for years. I just didn't have the idea because it was like, oh, I can't just replace the hammer with a rubber duck or something. Like it has to be different. And then over time, I saw different games and different ideas. And eventually I was like, hey, what if I made like a climbing game and you control each hand? And it's sort of the same idea that it's kind of weird at first, but then you have to like build up muscle memory. And that's how it started. And then it just sort of fell into place as I developed it. But to go back to your original question was like prototyping, or you mentioned like how valuable is it and stuff like that. So I don't know if we want to go there. I didn't really touch on that, but basically I didn't do a lot of like, I didn't prototype a bunch of different types of games or anything. It was very straight like into production on that game from Punch a Bunch.
Yeah, I have one follow-up about prototyping, but before we do that, would you say that the difference between a FODian game and a rage game, I wasn't familiar with any of those specific rage games you mentioned, but would you say that the difference is a FODian game is difficult but fair, similar to maybe Dark Souls, whereas a rage game is like actively tricking you? Like the only rage games I'm thinking of are like weird platformers where you're running and then a spike there's nothing to show you. A spike just kills you and you have to like memorize it.
Right.
Like is that what
Trap
you're
Adventure.
kind of, is that kind of what you're talking about? Or what do you mean FODi versus rage?
Okay, so what I'm talking about is that that a rage game is not intrinsically different from any other game, except it's just ridiculously hard and it's ridiculously punishing. Whether it's fair or not, it's like it's more just like it's designed to just make you angry. It's like obviously a rage game. It's like rage bait, and it's like good for content creators to a certain extent. But when I think of FODian games, I think more like physics based probably, but also like unique controls that make you like take a step back and like, this is kind of weird and interesting. Like, QWOP, right? Like the running game.
That's the one I think of. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same idea, right? Where it's like, it's not difficult. Like you literally need to just walk to here. Whereas Jump King is like, I don't know, have you seen Jump King?
I've seen
Okay, so
King.
Jump King is like a game where you're literally just jumping up in a map. Like it's like Super Mario, but some restrictions, but you're basically just jumping.
Okay.
And it's really just mainly about timing your jumps. Which is like I've played it quite a bit. I do actually like Jump King. I think it's good, but I don't think it's a FODian game because it obviously has the same component of falling all the way down, like you can fall down. But there's nothing to learn except the timing of the jump, right? Whereas in Bennett's game, it's just you have to like kind of coordinate the physics and understand like what's happening, and it's just like sort of like wiring neurons in your brain until it just becomes muscle memory. And before that, like there's just no way to play it. So you just have to sit and experiment until it makes sense. And I think it's such a cool thing to see a game where it's like you see someone fresh in the game and they're just like not able to do anything in the game. They're just like stuck in the beginning. And then you watch someone who's played a lot and they're just like, just like finishing the game in 2 minutes. I think that's really cool because it really speaks for like the skill range, and there's no like attributes or anything like that. It's like pure human skill. It's like watching the Olympics, like watching me run a marathon versus like an Olympic athlete, right? It's like there's nothing that really separates us. Maybe they're a little bit bigger and more athletic than I am, but like there's nothing, they didn't do anything, like they don't have some attribute point that really differentiates between the two of us. It's like it's really just about hard work and training, and I think that's really cool. And I was trying to capture that, and I wasn't sure if I got it right, but then watching speedrunners finishing the game in 4 minutes made me like, that was like the highest level of success. I was like, yes, okay, perfect. Like I can't even get close to that. So, it's really cool.
Yeah, you really captured something. I mean, I think every streamer I can think of played it. I mean, it's an incredible moment, like in Gamedev, and for people that follow you, it was really cool. And it's cool to see that like there is such a thoughtfulness behind it. Like on the surface, it's a rage game, but it's very cool to hear you talk about some of the nuance behind like what you were going for. And I do think you achieved that. Like you achieved a game that can have a level of mastery while being difficult and frustrating when you're brand new. And it's super cool. So well done.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Back to that point on prototyping. Now I'm curious if, since you did 2 games and both were, successful on different levels, but do you think that you got lucky in your prototyping, or is it more that you feel like you could refine any interesting mechanic into a good game, and that it's somewhere more just that you did things skillfully and you navigated and did them well?
All right, what's the question?
Since you didn't prototype, do you think it was luck? Do you think it was luck that you just happened to pick the right things, or is it skill that you just made those games good?
I mean, it's I do believe in luck. Is you need a lot of luck in life to I think definitely with Punch a Bunch, it's not a hugely successful game, and without the devlogs, I honestly don't know how successful it would have been. And it's a very particular game. I guess I think like I have something in my mind. I'm like, I want to play something like this and it doesn't exist. And so I'm going to make it. And then I try to make it, right? And so is that a skill? Is that luck? I'm not sure. I just like, I don't know that I think about it that way. I just try and make the thing that I want to make. Definitely think the climbing game was way more like strategic, methodical, like thought out in terms of like what game I was making, whereas Punch a Bunch was just literally, like I said, just like, oh, I'll make this thing. There wasn't like a lot of like the only thing that inspired that game was like literally like moving the upper body with one stick. If you haven't played, most people haven't played the game, so but like it's basically a boxing game, and the left analog stick you move the guy around like usual, but the right stick you use to control the upper body, so you can lean, and based off that you can like dodge, you can duck, and you can like based on how you time your upper body motion, you punch. So it's like if you want to punch, you need to like coordinate like the upper body, and if you don't, there's like no power in your punches. And so that's kind of like what I was envisioning in my mind, and that's ultimately what the game became, right? So um I don't know. So it's like, is it skill or luck? I don't know. Probably in my case, mostly luck. Definitely with Punch a Bunch, just luck. Because I mean, I just had an idea and I just went for it, and that's like my own experience with it, if that makes sense. But the climbing game obviously was a lot more, you know, I had this idea and I obviously wanted to make it, but then I also thought, well, okay, it looks like streamers are really looking for games to play. They keep playing the same games over and over, and they seem really bored. And there hadn't been a FODian game in many, many years. Like maybe a few here and there, but it was just very dry. And so I kind of thought, yeah, this probably is a good timing for a game like that. And I wanted to make one. I had an idea for one. And so it felt like, yeah, this is probably a good idea. So skill, I don't know, but it was definitely like planning, I guess, and feeling good about it.
Yeah, so you're maybe just more, instead of prototype driven, just sort of intuition driven. I mean, you're saying that you didn't just randomly make something. You made something that you wanted to play. You made something that you felt like didn't exist. Somewhat similar with your YouTube channel. Like you were looking at what you could maybe add, and you're looking at streamers and what they were playing. So I'm hearing that maybe there wasn't like a specific prototyping phase, but at least with the climbing game, there was thoughtfulness. There was, maybe not a outlined process, but there was, things going on to make you aim towards something that at least had the chance of being successful. So,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at any point during the development or approaching release for the climbing game, did you think it would be as successful as it was?
Yeah, like I said, I did have a good feeling about it. I definitely, yeah, I definitely felt like there was a drought in games that were like streamer friendly at the time. I think that's different now. I think a lot of, I don't know if it was because of my game, but I feel like these days like, people are just blasting out streamer games, right? So I think that landscape definitely shifted. I think there were a lot of games around the time when I released my game that came out with the same idea. So obviously other people had noticed the same thing that I had noticed. So there was like a bit of a vacuum at the time, I think. And so I definitely had a good feeling about it. I would have been surprised if nobody had picked it up. Also, the trailer, the first time I announced, like I had been working in secret on the game, and then I just put a trailer out on my channel, and the trailer did really well. And I could kind of, it's like, oh, okay, there's interest here. Like, I think I was right to assume that people want something like this now. So yeah, no, I was kind of like hopeful and had a good feeling about it. So obviously it did really well, and like, yeah, so many streamers played it, which was really awesome to see. But that was partially the goal with it, like to make it streamer friendly, which is why I made the game very like, there's no like tutorials, there's no main menu, and it's very like visual and easy to, like, one of the goals I had with the game was to, like, because I thought about a lot about like, okay, if you're a streamer and you're playing a game, like you don't want the game to be too complicated. You want, like, if somebody just like hops onto your stream and sees you playing a game, it should take a maximum, just seconds for them to understand what is this game they're playing, what is the goal, what's the risk, why are we doing this, right? And so I was very deliberate about that. Like I wanted it to be like, okay, we're climbing. If we fall down, we lose progress, and streamer gets angry, and it's funny, right? So that was very much like something I carried through the whole development, like minimal weird stuff, no tutorial, no slowing down, like keep the momentum up throughout the game. And so, Yeah, I did. I definitely tried as hard as possible to make it like streamer friendly while also delivering on the whole FODian aspect. Um, which is like why, you see the guy and he's like has a loincloth, right? But first he didn't have a loincloth. First I was like, oh, maybe he'll have peg legs, like pirate legs, like tree wood stumps. So it's like, oh, you can't use your feet. So I need some sort of justification, but it just felt weird. And he had like clothes on and stuff. And it's like, what is happening here? Why are we doing this? And so I was like, can I just do something that is sort of like attention grabbing instead, where you just like, what is going on? Because that was kind of the thing with Bennett's game, like, oh, there's a naked guy in a pot, and that's weird. So you're like, what is going on here, right? So I was like, okay, well, what if we just, I don't remember. I think it might have been my wife's idea. She was like, oh, just put a loincloth on him. I can't remember now. But I think it might have been actually my wife's idea to just put a loincloth on him or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's great, And it played very well with Bennett's game, like him being kind of naked and, so yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like just weird enough that it like makes you kind of stop, but it's not so weird that it like turns you off or grosses you out or something, but you're like, what am I looking at? And yeah, it has a kind of FODian, like you could look at a screenshot and it has a sort of FODian feel to it, I think. And so, yeah, I think that was a great choice.
Yeah, and it's true. Like because at first, like what you're saying about turning people off, like at first it was like, you could like see his butt crack like really clearly when the thing was flapping around, and I was like, man, it's kind of disturbing to play this, just like looking at this butt crack. But what I ended up doing was to just in the texture, I just darkened that whole area because it was like I was like generating ambient, like baked in ambient occlusion, so I would get this like occlusion going into the butt crack, so it really highlight. Like, you could really see how like obvious it was. It's like, man, so I like went in like manually and just paint the dark around it to not like highlight that
Oh my
line.
gosh.
And that like actually fixed it. So I think it's not too bad now. And I think it reached a good balance.
That's
yeah,
incredible.
And I was like super concerned about the cloth simulation. I was like, dude, this needs to like not come up further than X amount, right?
Yep.
So, but I think I got it. Like I was using Unity's cloth system. I was like, don't break on me now. it's important. But yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing tidbit. I hadn't heard that one before. The loincloth physics, the butt crack darkening. That's amazing. That's so fun. This might be a little too much in the weeds, but I think Bennett Foddy had a GDC talk. I'm wondering if you ever saw where he was like, put your names on your game. And
yeah.
I don't know if you did that specifically, but I do know I'm pretty sure you like linked to your video kind of talking about the game in the game. Yeah, just like, how are you thinking about, like, that's kind of interesting and unique. So like, where did you get there? And just kind of how are you thinking about like being this sort of solo dev personality, putting your names on your game? I don't know. I didn't really have that question written down, but does anything interesting come up from that like kind of thought process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're referring to like in the game, if you pause the game, there's like a button where if you click it, it takes you to the devlog. So I did one devlog about the video. It was like a devlog that just covered the entire process of making the game start to finish. And so in the menu, if you pause, there's like, watch me make this game. And there's like a link. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to thank my wife for that one too. Like it was like 2 days before releasing the game or something like that. She was like, and I had finished the devlog, so it was like uploaded and ready to go because I released the devlog on the same day where I released the game. So it's like I wanted like maximum, like, okay, we're gonna just dump everything. And so it was like literally 1 or 2 days before. She was like, you should put a link in the menu to this video so that people can watch it. Like I was like, good idea. Very good idea. And so I did that. And I don't know how she came up with it. I'm not sure actually, but I was just like, that is fantastic. Let's do it. And it worked out great because like all the streamers that played it, pretty much all of them clicked it and like watched it on stream.
Yeah.
So that worked out. I recommend doing that if you make a devlog, right? It was such a huge, because it made it like super interesting because then all of a sudden, all the streamers, like, they kind of felt more personal about playing the game, and they were like, when they were like yelling, they were like, Ponty, what did you do to me? Right? And stuff like that, which I don't think would have happened if I hadn't done that. Right? So it was like a happy, not accident, but like I hadn't thought to do it. It was my wife that suggested it. So get a smart wife. That's what you need.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing that your wife needs to start a game dev consulting business because clearly, I'm
Probably.
pretty sure you said in your Devlogs she named Punch a Bunch. She got you to add the video. She's just clearly full of good ideas. So she needs to start a consulting business. But
she's the brain behind the Ponty Pants brand.
yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, I did think that was a really interesting idea that I think more indie devs in particular could had to play around with, because I think something that gamers do enjoy about indie devs is this kind of connection to the creator. It's one or, maybe a small team of people making something. And that is really like, as a gamer, I enjoy playing something maybe a little more when I watch a YouTube video and I see the person and know that they're real. And like there's a connection there, like through that art piece. And so I do think more people could play around with something like that, even if they're not a YouTuber, just making one devlog or just a talking head video saying, I made the game, here's a couple thoughts. Like, I think stuff like that could be interesting for people.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it's super interesting and it makes it more personal. And we're kind of in a new era where you can actually make a game yourself without being a software engineer. And so I think it really is becoming like, like back in the day, in order to paint the painting, you needed to pick flowers and mix oils and stuff before you even got started, right? And that used to be like 2010, right? Like it used to be more like that. Like, wow, you got to build an engine, So it was sort of like a lost cause for most people back then. Whereas now you can really just open Unity and get started. And I think, I think Blueprints is a good example of that. Of Tonda Ross, the developer, who had like no experience making games, but he had this idea and he was just like, I'm going to do Unity tutorials and make this game. And he made Blueprints, which is a great game, right? So I was like, it's really cool to be in this kind of situation where you really can, like, as a one person. I do think he had like some employees at the end to finish that game, but obviously you don't need to make a game with that scope, right? I think it's cool to just be able to, because the thing is, like, with indie devs, and I think that's like the cool thing, to spin off on that thought, is that you can really make things that are weird that even a small company would be too risky for them to do, right? Like it's just like, if you have a weird idea, like Punch a Bunch, for example, it's such an kind of odd game. But I'm like super grateful I got to make that game, because it is such an odd game. And it was just something that I had in my head. And I was like, there's no way anyone is ever going to make a game like this, because it's just too strange, right? So I was like, well, I could make it. And, if you don't need to live in luxury, like, you can make a living off, making just very weird niche games and really experiment. And I think that's what's really cool with indie devs. Because it feels like a lot of indie devs say, it's like a Metroidvania or like, cloning huge games, which I think is cool, or Stardew Valley clones. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but you're missing out on the juice, on the best part, which is that you can make something totally wacky and probably be profitable and make it like a full-time income and keep doing it, right? Which I think is super cool. And then you should put your name on it, because like if you start develop, like Bennett, for example, like he developed like this physics-based style of weird games that are hard to play, but like it really appealed to a niche market. And so he's kind of like known for that now. And that can be you, but something else, right? So I think it's really a cool opportunity. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential. Like, I think these simulation games that came out of nowhere, like obviously Schedule 1 being the juggernaut, but like the stuff that came before that, like the card game simulator, and just like all kinds of simulator games, hot dog simulator, I don't know, whatever you want to, there's like anything for anything, right? It's one of those things where it's like a company would never risk doing something like that. But if you're just a solo dev and you know a little bit about Unity, you can just, I'm just going to make a weird thing, and you can do it. And I think that's super cool. So I encourage people to do more of that because I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think the indie game space has like a huge range of games that are like too weird or too small. And when I say too small, it can even still be like $1 million game. Like a AAA studio has to make so much money that there are like tons and tons of games that are still like could be super successful, but that would be too risky. I mean, a funny example is I've been following Edmund Macmillan just released Mugenics, which I don't know if you've seen this or if anyone hasn't seen it. It's a weird game. You're breeding cats, and I mean, it gets like not graphic, but you like see that happening on the screen, and it's like your cats can have cancer, and it's like way bizarre. Like no AAA company would make this game, but it's going to be hugely successful. Like it already is, and yeah, and then it's like he's another good example of like he's in that kind of like early indie dev, like kind of like legend status. So people know who he is, and he's, I think we could have people now putting their names on games and becoming the next Edmund Macmillan or Jonathan Blow or, whoever those people might be. So I think it's something people should think about in the indie game space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, don't be afraid to do something weird and do your own thing. Like, don't think that you have to do a specific genre or a specific thing, because I know there's a lot of like, and I don't necessarily disagree, but there's a lot of advice flying around the internet about, oh, to succeed on Steam, don't make this genre, do this genre. I don't really agree. I think there's definitely, like, I think Chris Sakowski is probably the biggest name, right? Like, for advocating for certain things. And I listen a lot to Chris. And I think if you haven't listened to Chris, you should absolutely listen to Chris. But you should also absolutely not listen to Chris. Like, I think you can learn a lot from Chris, and you can avoid a lot of like rookie pitfall things. Like how to set up your Steam page, how to promote your game, how to release your demo, how to kind of treat things. But I think there's also, I don't know that Chris necessarily, I think Chris he's a very level-headed guy. But Chris is very analytical. He looks at the present day through the lens of the past. So he's looking at data and aggregating, what worked yesterday, and then trying to predict the future of what is going to work tomorrow, right? And like, I think the consensus is that the what works on Steam is sort of like crafty, buildy games. What doesn't work on Steam is like a puzzle game or a platformer. Like, these are genres to stay away from. And I probably agree with that, except if you think you have something to add. If you're like, I want to make Metroidvania, but I have this idea which I haven't seen anyone do, I think you shouldn't listen to this advice of not making platformers, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, if you feel like you have something to add, you should do it. And I mean, like, I think you can shape the future of what's going to be popular. Like, nobody knew what a friend slop game was a couple of years ago. Now everybody knows what it is. And you know what I mean? So it's just sort of one of those things, like, don't be afraid to be experimental, and don't be afraid to kind of go into genres if you feel like you have something to add. I think that would be my way of thinking about it more than anything else. It's like, if you think you have, because put it this way, if you make a crafty buildy game and you feel like you have nothing to add to that genre, you'll have a way higher chance of success to make a puzzle game if you feel like you actually have something to add to that genre, right? So I think really follow your heart with that. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Like, so that's, I think, how I see those things.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. And yeah, this one in particular, like, I hear such a wide range of opinions on it, and it's really interesting. And the one thing that comes to my mind from what you said is just that data is also really tricky. And so, like, for example, making a platformer is, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the tutorial space or what, but that is like the easiest place to start. And so probably in the platformer genre, there's the most beginners in that genre. And so that's going to lower the amount of successful games in that thing. And so it's like, it's just really tough when you're talking about data. And I think Chris would say, like, if you just have passion, make whatever you want. He's just saying the data says you're most likely to make X dollars if you do this. So yeah, I really like your perspective on it, though. I think that's very helpful.
Totally. And so it's like absolutely not saying that Chris is wrong. It's just
Right.
like, it's more like how you interpret what he's saying, right? It's like, it's something to like be aware of, obviously, right? Like if you make a puzzle game, you are not going to sell copies like Schedule 1. Probably. It's possible. Like, I mean, Blueprints didn't sell as much as Schedule 1, but it's doing very well. So it's like, yeah. Anyways, I think but it's like, obviously what Chris is saying is super important and useful, but it's more, think about how you're interpreting and your own like path. Like, what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah. And for anybody in the comments, don't be too mean to Chris. He helps us a lot, like Pontus said.
Oh, nobody's going to be mean to Chris. Yeah. Everybody loves Chris.
That's right. Shifting gears just a little bit, I would love to ask you about some design questions for your 2 games specifically, just to get a little bit of a look into your brain and how you were thinking about things. Starting with Punch-a-Bunch, do you remember what the biggest challenge was, or do you feel like there was a particularly strong thing that you had to overcome in the creation of that game?
Yeah, I think just the fact that I didn't know how to make a game was the biggest. Yeah, I didn't know how to make a game. So I had to learn how to make a game at the same time as I was making it, while also making YouTube videos. So I guess that was also challenging, to just balance and juggle that. I guess there was like the trickiest thing was to really get the ragdoll physics working in a way that felt good. I think that was the hardest thing, really, which was very early on. So I kind of solved that pretty quickly. I mean, if you think it's good as it is, but but that was probably the biggest hurdle, just kind of learning Unreal Engine's physical animation system and all that stuff. I was a lot of like, it's not working, and it was weird because like if it didn't work, I'd like redo everything, re-rig, and there was a lot of stuff just to get it like working properly. Yeah. And I remember making the menus took like crazy long, like 6 months or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Because there's a lot of menus of like, unlocking this and like customize your guy and hats and stuff. Which is also why in the climbing game, I was like, no menu. It takes too long.
Yeah, another thing that I imagined would be pretty tough is that you had like a unique control scheme. You mentioned the stick and being able to, lean and punch. Did you ever implement like a just basic like button mashing format, or did you feel like the physics-based movement was like essential for the game?
Yeah, I did in the end add like an assisted mode, so you can just press the buttons. It's still like operating under the same physics and everything, but it's more like, it's like if you, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's basically like an assisted mode where it's like you can hold down a button and then release the punch, and it will perform the leaning action kind of for you. So there is like a easy mode, so to speak, because it was just too inaccessible. Like people just. Some people loved it, right? But a lot of people were like, I just want to play the game. I don't want to learn this stuff, right? Yeah. So I felt like I gotta do something, So in the end, I did. That was a good idea, probably.
Can people play with mouse and keyboard too? Because I imagine doing a controller only game would be pretty tough on Steam.
Yeah, you can. You can play with a mouse. So when you move the mouse, you lean. Yes. And then WASD to move the guy around. Cool. I think it definitely is like best experienced on a controller, but you can play mouse and keyboard. But it's a little trickier probably. And I've seen complaints in the reviews about mouse and keyboard. Like, you can't play mouse and keyboard. It's so bad. But then some people got into it. So you can, but it's harder, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that just seemed like a challenge. If you could go back with your knowledge today and restart the development of Punch-a-Bunch, is there anything you would do differently?
Not really, honestly. Like I said, I had a very like quirky vision for the game, and I'm kind of grateful that I was able to follow through with that and not just make the game so accessible as to remove what was interesting about the game in the first place. I mean, clearly there's like some game design decisions that could have been better, and the look of the game looks like it's a kid's game. Like we had relatives over, and they have children, and like the youngest boy was just like, I want to play Punch a Bunch. Like I have a poster here somewhere.
Yeah.
I think I took it down. It's up there. And he saw the picture, and he was like, I want to play that. Can I please play that? And I was like, yeah, but you're not gonna like it. So that was definitely a big problem, that it looks like a kid's game, but then it's like really hard, and it requires a lot of like hand-eye coordination, which kids are famously not good at. So yeah, that was but at the same time, I like the look of the game, and I don't want to change it. But that is definitely something that I would have been more mindful of. That it's like, make sure that the aesthetics of the art matches what the game is. Like Dark Souls look dark and grim for a reason, right? And the gameplay matches that, right? So I think that's one thing.
Yeah, that seems like that would be a challenge in just like the marketing and people understanding what it is right away. Like they talk about the importance of a few seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my climbing game, I really took that to the extreme there, where I was like, okay, I'm going to make it extremely clear what kind of game this is by making it look very similar to Bennett's game, so that there's absolutely, because I knew it was a hard game, right? So it's like, I got to make it clear, otherwise I'm going to get review bombed by people who wanted like a casual climbing experience, right? So it's like, we're going to make it look like Bennett's game as much as possible without it, you know, obviously being too clone-like, right? Even though people, it's probably a bit too, I don't know, I like it. I think the look is cool, just sort of like very plain and basic. Definitely reminiscent of his game. And then even in the title, I was like, a difficult game about climbing. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so for everybody leaving a review saying it's too hard, I told you so. Right. So yeah.
Yeah, you really went 180 from like, this game is like kind of confusing in the colors and its difficulty, and you're like, no, the next one, everything you could possibly think about this game being hard, I'm going to tell you right away. So that's a funny 180. Another cool thing about Punch a Bunch is that it has like several boss designs. I was curious if you had any that you were the most proud of, or that you think is like the most interesting.
Not in particular. It's more like how I designed the AI in general. I'm very proud of. Like I'm very happy how I made it. So it's like, because all of the bosses, like they have the same foundation, and then I added parameters that I could tweak that would make them harder and more tricky. But I could also do it like in different ways. So some of them are like really slow, but they punch really hard. Some of them are like slow with the block, but they're, you know what I mean? Like I could really tweak different things to make them really feel different from one another. And then I also designed it in a way so that it was easy to hook in like custom animations and custom attacks. So I could have like, you know, a bunch of different wild things, like the Mexican wrestler just like jumps up on the rope and then just goes up in the air and then slams down on you and stuff like that. And so that was really cool and it was actually really quick to, like once I had the system in place, it was really fast to sort of make new bosses. And I guess that would be one regret. Like I wish I had made more bosses, like a bit of a longer game. But I was just like, I'd spent like, 3 years on the game. I was like, we got to ship now. Like I kind of was tired and didn't really have any ideas for bosses anymore. I was like, I think I've run out of ideas at this point. Let's just get on with it. But then obviously with time, you start thinking like, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done that. And but because of obviously the game is kind of dead at this point, so it's like, it doesn't really make sense to go back and add things to it right now. Like it just, I think my time is better spent like working on a new project. So I'm probably not going to do that. But yeah, it would have been cool to make more because it was so easy to make new things. So yeah, no boss in particular, more just like the system behind it all. I felt very good about.
Yeah, that's really
cool. Fun. It was fun to make it.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting and seems pretty important if you're going to make a game with bosses to have some sort of system, or it seems like at least a very nice tool to have. So that's pretty cool. Moving on to a difficult game about climbing. A couple questions about that. You mentioned it looking a lot like Bennett Foddy's game. Were you ever worried that it would be too much like Getting Over It? Was that ever a fear you had?
Um, yeah, I suppose a little bit. Like you kind of feel a bit like, ooh, like what's the, especially before I released the trailer, I definitely felt a bit hesitant. I was like, man, does it just look too much like his game now? And what's like Bennett gonna think? Like I was kind of worried. I was like, but then I spoke to Jonas about it. Like we talked on Discord and I showed him the trailer before I released it. And he was like, don't worry about it. Like you're going to get people complaining for sure. But he was like, it's really important that, that the people know what kind of game it is. And I think this really makes it obvious. He was like, yeah, you're probably good to go. And so, yeah, that made me feel a bit better. So, but I was nervous enough to call him about it. So I guess I can't say that I wasn't totally, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're better off leaning towards looking more like something. And the important piece is that
You made something unique, like you were never at any point trying to make just a copy and, just a reskinned version of his game, even though it was inspired by him. And so I think that core piece is more important than aesthetics, and people will figure it out and make their decisions and about whether they like it or not. So
Yeah, totally.
I've heard you say in other interviews that you started to think about the climbing game as just a game about surfaces. I was just curious, was that a framework of looking at the game? Did that come pretty early, or was it like was that just born out of the challenges of like running out of stuff to add to the game?
I think that was pretty clear pretty early on. I think the kind of the first draft or like idea I had in my mind was that it was going to be a lot more slippery than it is. That kind of part of the challenge would be to like you have to move your mouse slowly so that you're like, ooh, and if you pull too hard, it's like he would slip. That it would be like this nail biting, like, oh my god, please don't slip, please don't slip. But the game became so like slow, and then kind of goes back to what I was saying about streamers and people watching. Like I feel like it wouldn't necessarily be clear for somebody watching like how hard it is. It would just be like, what's the problem here, right? Like he's just like barely moving and we're not getting anywhere, and then we're just sliding down and it's boring, right? So I was like, well, should probably up the friction, right? And so, yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, I think friction was always mostly, yeah, pretty much from the beginning an aspect. But then obviously it, like I said, like it shifted from being just super slippery and frustrating to more like, okay, what if we just have, maybe some slippery surfaces, but like have it be more like binary, like either you can climb on it or you can't. Like there's certain surfaces that you just slip on, like you can't climb on them, and other surfaces that are quite grippy. So otherwise it just becomes like confusing in the player's mind, like, wait, what can I actually climb on? What am I supposed to do here? And then also like if they don't figure out that if they move the mouse slowly that they can kind of just get up, then they might just be stuck and be like, what's this crap? And then turn it off, right? So yeah, it was definitely obvious. But then I do remember like the first draft of the initial, not level, but like the first area of the first map. I remember just like putting rocks. It was just all rocks. And I was like, this is kind of boring. It's just a bunch of rocks. And so I started adding a bunch of other things, like just random items to make it more fun to look at. The problem was then that it's like everything had the same friction. It was either slippery or not slippery, right?
Yes.
And so it became a bit like, maybe people don't know what Worms is anymore. I'm getting old. But basically, if you've ever seen the game Worms, it's like this hand-drawn world, and there are these worms, and you can like shoot each other. But the environment is like you can destroy it. And there's like all these paintings of like, here's some grass, here's a tank, here's a metal thing. But like if you blow up the terrain, it like everything is affected the same way. So if you blow like a bazooka, there's just like this round hole, and so it completely disregards the art. like what's actually there. Like metal is not harder than
Yeah.
rock and stuff. So that's a bit how the game felt. Like it was just like, it doesn't matter what I'm grabbing, everything has the same friction, and so you just stop looking, and that. So that, I think that was like a big moment for me where I was like, okay, I do need to make the game interesting to look at, not just a bunch of rocks, but everything needs to have its own sort of feel and its own sort of mechanics. And if anything is at any point like confusing, it needs to not be there, right? And I worked a lot with sound effects to really kind of make things feel different. Like if you grab metal, the sound effect is like very different from rock. And I think that also helps to sort of communicate that this, like, what you grab is important. And I think it makes the player kind of pay attention to what they are grabbing and so on. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I don't want to keep you too long, but I did have a couple viewer questions I'm hoping to ask you. So these are questions from my viewers, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Someone
Yeah.
asked, if you had infinite resources and an infinite budget, what game and genre would you make?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought about. I don't have either of those two things, so I don't think there's much use in thinking about it.
That's
I
fair.
live in this world. I live in the real world. Well, I have neither of those things.
That's a fair point. In the current VFX and game market with lots of layoffs, do you think being a solo dev and hoping getting out of the industry is still a viable dream?
Yeah, if you have something to add, it goes back to that. I think if you have something to add to the indie space, there's absolutely space for you. If you're just looking to collect a paycheck and not add, I think it might be hard. You gotta be willing to sort of explore on, ideas that are, more kind of audiences that are underserved, or, be a little risky about it, right? Like, make something weird that you're not sure, you know. Um, and then I think there's absolutely a good possibility that and if you don't succeed with your first game, if you just like keep going with that mentality, I think like success is eventually going to find you.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And I'll just add that I haven't even been doing the podcast this long, and I've talked to at least a couple people that recently have reached, escape velocity. So it's still happening. People are still doing it. So be encouraged. It's hard, and maybe it takes a little luck and a lot of skill and a lot of
Yeah.
work, but it can be done.
I mean, I think probably I don't have data for this. I'm just speculating, but I would imagine that there are more indie dev people today that succeed than ever. Like
Yep.
I don't think we're like on a down. Like if you actually take the total amount of people making a full-time living off indie games, I would imagine that we're at an all-time high on that, because like it's so much easier to make games. Players are becoming more and more like familiar with indie games, and they're willing to look past like bad graphics or janky looking UIs because they know that there might be a gem in there, right? So I think 10 years ago or so, people were just very primed to play AAA games, but I think indie games are becoming like a household thing now. So I think we're at I know that the game dev industry, in terms of bigger companies, have gone through a bit of a tough time, but I think for indie developers, I think it's like pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's competitive, but I mean, I feel like every day I see some game on Steam that I've never heard of that has like crazy amount of reviews. You're just like, man, this is like millions of dollars. This is crazy, right? So I think it's a good. I think it's looking good for indie devs, I think.
I would agree with that sentiment, and I think that gap happening at the top, at the AAA level, there's just as many gamers. Gamers aren't gone, and so somebody's got to fill the void, which could be indie devs.
Exactly. It's just that they don't have the entire market share anymore.
Right.
So they're having to like actually compete with smaller developers now.
Exactly. Would you ever want to work on a team, or are you pretty content solo?
Yeah, if I would consider hiring people if I had a project going that warranted it. Absolutely. Yeah. But I wouldn't like join probably. I don't know. Yeah, probably. I wouldn't do like contract work or join a studio. No. But I would consider like teaming up with someone if I trusted them or yeah. Like working alone is cool, but it also gets a little stale after a while, and it's kind of like it's nice to be able to share ideas and share the load for sure. Obviously, it comes with a lot of downsides, but yeah, no, I'd definitely be interested in that.
Yeah, very cool. How much do you think being a YouTuber helped with Punch a Bunch's success? I actually think you maybe already kind of talked about that. I'm feeling like it's pretty big.
I'll give a 2-second answer, which is like, I think it helped a lot. And like I said, if I hadn't done the YouTube stuff, I don't think I would have finished that game to begin with. So YouTube really was everything for Punch a Bunch. Much less so with the climbing game. But yeah.
Yeah. A couple people were curious about you making your own music and just how were you able to learn that? Did you have any background in music stuff before or any tips for people wanting to do that themselves?
Not really. I didn't really have any experience. I didn't really play any instruments as a kid. I wanted to play guitar. Didn't get a guitar.
It's
so,
tough.
But no, I learned by I just found some kind of like piano courses online. Like took some lessons to learn like some basic chords and I don't remember the other terminologies, but yeah, chords and stuff, like kind of basic things. And I did some tutorials. Like I followed a few tutorials on YouTube about FL Studio, how to use the program. And the rest, like most of it was just very like intuition. Just played around in the software until it sounded good, and that was it.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay. I think actually I should have mentioned I have a video on it. I think it's called like learning to make, I don't remember what. There's a video on my channel which is like learning to make music for my indie game or something like that, which is like a standalone video of like how I started and how it kind of ended. It's very self-contained. So if you're interested, I think that's a really good one. It's very accurate kind of depiction of how it actually went. So I would probably recommend watching that. Covers most of it.
Yeah.
And
cool.
which courses I followed and stuff like that. So yeah.
Sweet. Okay, last viewer question, and then I'll end you with one question of my own. So this person said, I noticed Punch a Bunch and a difficult game about climbing have streamlined experiences where the player can't customize too many things that affect gameplay. Is this intentional? And yeah, is it intentional?
Yes. Because few reasons, but I mean, one of the main reasons being that it makes it easier as a solo developer. Like there's less balancing and fewer things to keep track of. Like if you have a lot of different attribute points and stuff like that, it just becomes a nightmare for balancing, and you need to do way more playtesting and stuff like that. So it just keeps it more contained. But also, I tend to prefer games that have minimal stuff like that. Like I'm not a big like RPG nerd. I don't like oh, let's try out all the different builds and stuff. Like I'm the kind of person, I'll just like go online like, okay, best Elden Ring build. Like I don't like experimenting much with that stuff, which is probably why I prefer Sekiro over Dark Souls, because it doesn't have like the attribute stuff. It's very clean, like one weapon, like very intentional design, right? And so I tend to gravitate towards games like that. So I think it's only natural that I would make games like that.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I find those simple, like you do one thing games to be very satisfying and very soothing. Well, this has been an absolute treat to get to chat with you. But it is the Dev Dream podcast. And so I made the channel to help inspire both myself and other people to keep following their dreams of making games. And I'm just curious for you, as we wrap up this podcast, what would you say is your game dev dream in this season of life?
Because I don't. So speaking of prototyping, I actually I'm spending most of my time. Like I took a long break after finishing. So I made a new map for the climbing game, which some people might not know. It wasn't as extensively played. I think people are saturated on the rage market now. It still did well. People played it, but yeah. So I made a new map for the climbing game. It took me about a year, and I felt really like burned out after that. And I was like, I gotta take some time off. But I'm mainly reading books, trying to learn more, and I'm spending a lot of time programming. I'm learning. I'm trying to learn like programming from scratch. Like when I get rid of my game engine addiction, so I'm reading this book, and I don't know.
Incredible.
I'm following like a Handmade Hero. I don't know if you know what that is. You can look it up, but it's basically like this long series about how to make your own game engine, and I'm finding that it's just awesome to have some time and just learn, because I feel like like ever since I even started this whole thing, I felt like I never had enough time to learn. So I'm really like, I feel grateful to just, I really want to learn. I'm reading some game dev books. I've ordered a bunch of books, and I'm watching videos, and yeah, like I said, learning programming. And I've just like this week started actually prototyping, because it's something that I've never done. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like actually do this, because I have this like idea that it's like, I don't need to prototype because I can just think about it and I'll know if it's fun or not. But then I think it was Jonas that said it, that it's like, that's not how it works. You have to try it and you'll discover things. And so I really do want to take, I feel really grateful to have this period, and I'm able to actually spend some time and really think about my next project. So I'm really trying to like not just dive headfirst into development of my next project, but really, see what's calling and what feels like this is what I want to do, right? So I'm gonna give this a try, do some prototyping, read my books, learn more about programming. That said, I also like feel like there's obviously a bit of a stress, like, man, like, am I ever gonna have another idea? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, what's my next game? Like, I should be working on my next game. Like, come on. Every day games are being released, and so that's like one less thing that needs doing, right? Like in the world. So I guess right now the dream is to like be fully engrossed in like a project that I care deeply about, and with like a long development process where it's like I can think about it and add things and really like put a lot of love into it. Then maybe like early access would be cool. And like, because that's something that's like because you asked about a dream. So I guess that would be like a dream to have like this ongoing project that people are actually actively playing, and you're like making things for the game and getting actual, like when you implement something, you actually get feedback from the community. Because that's one thing when you haven't released, you there's no feedback, right? Like you just don't know, like, is this even good, right? So that is like rose tinted glasses. I want that right now, just like fully in development, but that's probably because I'm not in development right now, because like once you're in development, you're just like, man, I can't wait to finish this thing. So we'll talk again when I'm actually there, and we'll see. I'm sure I'll be like, oh my God, I can't wait to prototype. That's my dream. I just want to prototype things. So I'm really trying to like, just my dream right now is prototyping and reading books. But your mind kind of goes elsewhere, I think, automatically. At least mine does. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to be like in a project again. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Pontus, that's a great dream. I'm so glad you're able to be in a season after all your hard work these last couple of years making those 2 games, that you can just catch up on that learning season. And I hope that your next game after you decide a prototype is just the best. So best of luck with all of that. And thanks for joining me. This was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It was fun. It was great. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone.
Yes.
Good luck. Good luck on your journey.
Thank you so much for watching this entire episode with Ponty Pants. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was such an awesome conversation. Now, as I mentioned, there is a new way to support this channel, which is YouTube memberships. Now, I want to talk for just a couple of minutes about some unique ideas I have about memberships. So first off, let me just say, I've been doing this channel for about 6 months, and it has been a real pleasure to get to talk to so many devs and also be supported by you and this community. And I am kind of hopeful that maybe this could be something that could support me a little bit more long-term financially so that I can maybe even up the amount of videos that I do per week, upgrade the setup, and so on. So one way that I'm going to experiment starting now is with YouTube channel memberships. Now, the way that this normally works and the way that YouTube kind of pushes you to do it is like kind of like you're paying for content. And so it's like, you give a couple dollars and you get the smallest tier, and then the more money you add, the more stuff you get. I actually am not going to do that. I don't like that idea. I prefer that everyone that gives at any level gets all the stuff I'm offering. So that's how I'm going to approach this. So there are different membership tiers starting as low as $5 and up to some ridiculous amount. I think I did like $100 a month. But everyone in all of those tiers gets the same things, which include, first off, and I think the coolest, which could be interesting, is access to a private members-only Discord with myself. So we get a chance to connect on a deeper level. That's also in the future where I will be posting previews for guests that are coming on and where people will be able to submit potential questions to those guests. I'm also thinking I will do a couple of members-only videos. Now, these will not be honestly great content. I'm just imagining I will post some just talking head videos like this, where I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts and sort of condensing some of the information from multiple interviews, and just kind of spewing them out there. So to be honest, not anything worth paying for. Like, you wouldn't ever pay for that content. But the reason I think it's still valuable is that if you are enjoying these videos and you're getting something out of this community, of me being able to bring these devs in for questions, and you want to help me and support that, you like that content exists in the world, this is the way that you could participate in helping me make it, by supporting me financially at some level. So that is YouTube memberships in a nutshell. You can click on it. There's a few other little things you get, like you get some badges in the comment sections. I think on one of them I put priority comments. I reply to every comment at the moment anyway, so that's not really a thing. And also, let me know your thoughts on this. If you're still watching and you have opinions about memberships, well, you are the viewer that I care the most about, kind of connecting with and making sure is good for. So if you hate the idea of memberships completely, I'm not really emotionally attached to it. This is just a sort of test phase. I will announce this on the next couple of videos, and we will see where it goes from there. But like I said, thank you so much for watching. You are the real MVP if you've made it this far. And I just can't say how grateful I am for this experience, getting to talk to devs like Ponty Pants and Jonas and Tim Ruswick, and just real legends who've been willing to sit down with me. So I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. And thanks for considering the memberships. Have a good day, my friend.